Hi guys, what is up? Welcome back to my channel. I am so excited to film this video because we're going to be talking about one of my favorite things ever, books. I love books and I am just so excited. I've been incorporating them into my channel for a little bit now, but this video is going to be just all about books, all about the books that I have read this year and my honest opinions on all of them. I'm going to do my best to put timestamps at the bottom so that you guys know when I'm talking about what book. I'm going to give you the warning now that there will be spoilers. I feel that the only way to correctly give my honest opinion and review is going to be to include spoilers. It's just, it has to happen. So if you have not read the book and you plan on it, or you're currently reading it, you don't want any spoilers, just pay attention to the timestamps down below and skip ahead, skip around, or come back to this video when you've finished reading. I also just want to put a little disclaimer out there. All of the things I'm going to talk about today are my own opinions. It doesn't mean that they are right or wrong. It's just my honest opinion on these books. So I'm sorry if I don't like a book that you love. It is nothing against you. I can totally respect a book for what it is. It just might not have been my cup of tea. And nobody's opinion is right or wrong. That's the thing about opinions, and I think that that is the beautiful thing about books, is they are all up for interpretation. There's no need for us to be fighting about it. I want this to be a welcoming, safe space for us to just talk about books. So feel free to leave your favorite book in the comments or book suggestions down below. Feel free to share your opinions on books, but let's just make sure we're respecting everybody's opinion. I saw a TikTok and this girl was saying that people were fighting over books and judging people for reading certain types of books, and she was like, we're not solving world hunger, we're reading. And that is how I feel, so it's really not that serious. There's no need to be fighting over it. Okay, now that we have gotten that out of the way, let's dive right in. I am all ready today. I am wearing my Basgiath or Basgiath. I'm probably going to mispronounce a lot of stuff from this book series, but I am wearing my Basgiath sweater in honor of today, and just to kind of get into the book spirit. I've got my water. I hope that you have a coffee, tea, a drink, water, whatever that might be. Buckle on in because I feel like this is going to be a long video. I talk a lot, especially about books. I figured I could start this with just a little bit of a background on me and my advice and stuff about reading. I don't know if I've ever talked about this on YouTube. I know I've kind of talked about it on TikTok, but if I have, sorry, you can skip ahead, or if you don't care, I won't be offended. I'm gonna keep it short and sweet. Growing up, I was a huge reader. When I was a kid, I would read like a book a day. I have fond memories of spending my summers at my local library, and they used to have summer reading challenges, and I would go with my mom and pick out a bunch of books, and you would read and you would get prizes for reading. It was my favorite thing. I loved reading. I just loved diving into these other worlds. Granted, I was reading kids' books, so they're a lot easier to consume, but still, I was a big reader. I think the height of my reading was when I was like middle school to beginning of high school. That is when like the Twilight series came out, the Hunger Games, and I was reading those in all of my free time. Like, that's all I did. It consumed my life. At my core, I'm a fangirl, and I loved that time of my life where we were just so into the fandom of like Twilight and the Hunger Games and all of that. Also had a huge love for like fantasy and just like Harry Potter, those types of worlds. I remember loving reading so much that I wanted to be an author myself back when I was a kid, and I would write little stories on my family's computer, and they would usually be inspired from like Goosebumps or something like that. I would like write my own versions. I was convinced I was going to be an author. I even had debated when I was younger going to college like with an English major, But looking into it, I didn't really know what I was going to do with that major other than teach, and that's just not it for me. Honestly, all the respect in the world if you're a teacher. I don't know how you do it, but that's just not my calling. So I was a theater major. I did take a lot of classes about screenwriting and playwriting though, which I really enjoyed because it let me kind of get back into that mindset of writing and coming up with my own stories. Around like mid to late high school is when I really fell out of reading, and I think it was because of school. Like, school just really made me hate reading. All of the required readings we had, they just weren't fun, and I got to a place where I hated reading. Like, you would not catch me within 10 feet of a book. I got sad about it because I had loved reading so much, and so it made me really sad that I couldn't enjoy these books anymore. I remember trying to get back into reading after I graduated college, and I just couldn't do it. Like, nothing would really grasp me. I would read a little bit and then it would lose me pretty quick. Around this time last year is kind of when I wanted to start getting back into reading. I feel like that's when book talk started blowing up and people started rediscovering their love for reading. I was feeling a little bit of FOMO and I wanted to join in. I got back in. I think the first book that I read was It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I know a lot of us girlies we went through our Colleen Hoover phases, and it got me back into reading. Then my lovely boyfriend gifted me a Kindle for my birthday. So my birthday's in January, so I got it at the beginning of the year, and I've been hooked ever since. Kindles are life-changing. We'll talk about those in a second. But I really rediscovered my love for reading. I think that one of the most important things that I've learned on this journey of getting back into reading is you have to listen to yourself and just listen to what you want to read. Like, find your genre. For me, I love like romance, fantasy, some young adult, even though some of it can be cheesy because, you know, I'm in my late 20s now, so, you know, not fiction, anything along those lines. That is what I enjoy reading. I think for a long time I was pushing myself to read books that other people were reading when it was not necessarily the genre that I wanted to read. And I have found with myself, like, there's some books that I haven't finished, and it's because it just wasn't the right time. Like, I'm a big vibes person, and I realize that sounds stupid, but like, the vibes just have to be right with when I'm reading a book. And if I'm not feeling it, if it's a sad book and I just know I'm not mentally prepared for that, like, don't read it, you know? So it has to be just like the right time for me to get into a book and the right genre. And thanks to like book talk and the internet, I really feel like I found my genre and found a lot of people who love similar books to me. So that has made it so easy. I know that like we've been saying like, oh, it's a Barbie summer or like a Barbie year because we've all kind of been like getting into these new hobbies and stuff. I truly feel that way. Like, it is the year of the woman and I think it will continue to be. And I'm like, girlies, it's our year. I remember watching an interview with Margot Robbie, and she was saying how girls are kind of forced to grow up, and, or wait, was it Margot Robbie or Greta Gerwig? I can't remember, but they were saying that girls are kind of forced to grow up and like stop playing with like dolls and stuff like that, but guys get to keep playing video games and nobody judges them for it. And I just feel like this has been the year of us getting back to our roots and doing things that we love, and like, I don't know, just really living in our prime and like not feeling the pressure to grow up. So I love that for us. I feel like everyone has been like reading and, you know, just doing things that make them happy, and I just love it. And I feel like, how cheesy, but I'm just so happy and thankful for things like TikTok and YouTube that let us kind of like express our opinions and our joy about these things, and we all get to talk about it and kind of have this like fun little community. It's awesome. I'm a big fan. I feel like this is what we all wanted back in the day when we were like reading Twilight, but we didn't have it, and now we have the means for that, so we're like reverting back to our like 13-year-old selves. I'm here for it. But yes, as I mentioned, I got a Kindle. I really feel like that's what got me back into reading. I am the biggest advocate for getting a Kindle because I don't know, I just love it. There's got to be a science behind it. I've seen so many TikToks on this, but something about reading on a Kindle makes you read faster, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the percentage that, you know, you're like, oh, I'm 75% through this book, I can finish it off today. I don't know if it's the minutes in the chapter, because it'll tell me like 5 minutes left in the chapter, and I'm like, I can read that in 5 minutes. Like, oh, 10 minutes for the next one, I could read that. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because it's flat, and so I don't see that it's like a 600-page book that might look intimidating to me. I'm not worried about how much I have left because I can't see it. I don't know, Kindles play some sort of mind game on you, but it works. So big fan of the Kindle. Currently I have this is just a Kindle Basic, I believe the 2023 11th edition. I can't remember. It was like the newest one that came out at the end of December, beginning of January. It's just the Kindle Basic. I am a big fan. It's a little small in my opinion, but you get used to it. I have a little case on with a pop socket. Highly recommend because it's very comfortable to just lay down and read. I think I'm looking into getting the Kindle Paperwhite. That was the one that I wanted, but my boyfriend didn't know that at the time. That one has the adjustable like warm lighting, and it's waterproof or like water resistant. It's a little bit bigger, so looking into potentially getting that to kind of up my reading game because I take this thing with me everywhere I go. Okay, I think we have gotten through that intro. That was a lot. Let's get into the books. Okay, I have my Goodreads pulled up. I'll have my Goodreads linked below if you guys want to follow me or be friends on there. I don't post super intricate reviews of books. Like I said, I'm there for the vibe of the book, and I'm not going to pretend to be a New York bestseller or a New York Times bestseller or a writing critic. I just, if I like a book, I like a book. Okay, we're going to start at the very beginning of the year. So on January 2nd is when I first started reading. Oh, actually, I mixed this up a little bit. I think I started with It Ends With Us. Let me start with that. So that was the first Colleen Hoover book I read. That was also the first book that got me into reading. I understand that Colleen Hoover can kind of give fanfic vibes at times. I don't think her writing is anything to brag about, but I think let the girls enjoy what they enjoy. Like, we're not, I don't know. I'm not gonna look at you any different if you read Colleen Hoover or like Stephen King, whatever. We're all reading books. They are quick, short reads. I think that they're great for somebody who wants to get back into reading. They're usually romance. Again, nothing crazy, but they're fun little books to get into. I really enjoyed that book. It was the first book I had read in a very long time, and I got through it in a couple of days. I really liked the story. I loved the romance aspect. It took a very, very dark turn, so I would suggest reading trigger warnings before you read this book if you have some triggers. Sometimes I just don't read trigger warnings. I just go into books. I'm like, whatever. I'm unaffected. But I thought it was a good book to get me back into reading. After that, I read The Perfect Marriage. This was the first book that I had read on my Kindle. I loved this book. Thrillers are another genre that I forgot to mention. I love thrillers, and this book was kind of forgetting what some of these older books were about because it's just been so long since I've read it. Oh yes, this book is about a couple who to the normal person might seem like they have the perfect marriage, and that is not the case behind the scenes, and the husband is actually having an affair. He like sneaks away to their like lake house or something to have this affair, and when he wakes up she is stabbed and dead, and he is well aware that he's going to get blamed for it. He's also well aware his wife is going to find out that he was having an affair. His wife is like an insane like attorney, is it? yeah, she's like a lawyer, and he's a struggling writer. So he ends up confessing to her that he was having an affair, and he's like, hey, I need a lawyer to defend me in this case. So now she is like taking on the case of defending her husband, but like also dealing with the fact that he was cheating on her. The twist at the end is just so insane, and like it's time jumped forward, and like, again, I'm gonna give a little bit of spoilers, but you end up finding out that the wife was behind it the entire time, and he ends up on like death row, and she feels like no remorse for it. It's just kind of crazy wild story. Okay, after that I read Rock Paper Scissors, which is another thriller. I was very into thrillers at the beginning of the year. That's about a couple who I think they win a weekend away, which already kind of seems sketchy, but the husband suffers from like face blindness, which I've never heard of before, but he can't really recognize people, like his friends or family. Even sometimes he can't recognize his wife. I don't fully remember the twist in this book, but I remember it being crazy. It was only 297 pages, so it was a pretty quick read. Yeah, I kind of forgot how this book ended, but I remember it being wild, and I really enjoyed it. After that, I noticed that I was reading too many thrillers, and it was starting to like affect my dreams. I am somebody who is very affected by what I watch on TV or what I read, and like I'll start dreaming of it. Like it happens with almost every single book that I read. So I was having like nightmares, and I was like, okay, it's time to read a romance and get back into some happy vibes. So after that, I read It Starts With Us, which is the sequel to It Ends With Us. I struggled with this book. I struggled to get into it, and I was kind of sad. I thought I was gonna love it because it was the story of like Atlas and Lily getting back together, and like we love Atlas, so I thought I was gonna love it. I think that he stays being perfect. Like, I'm a big fan. I just thought it started off really slow. About halfway through is kind of when it got me, and I was reading it a lot. I do love that the characters got a happy ending. We love a happy ending. So I enjoyed seeing that aspect, but it is a little cheesy at times. Again, I'm not one to judge. Okay, after that I read Ugly Love. Ugly Love is one of my favorite Colleen Hoover books. It might have even been one of my favorite reads of the year. Ugly Love is all about this girl Tate and this guy Miles. Basically, she moves in with her brother, and Miles is her brother's friend who lives across the hall from them, I believe. They realize that they have a mutual attraction to each other, but like they don't want anything serious, so they start hooking up. They start kind of having a like friends with benefits situation that nobody knows about, because obviously her brother would like kill Miles. And of course they end up falling in love, and this book had a dual POV, so it was switching back and forth between both of their perspectives, and you end up finding out that Miles has this insane past, and it's really sad and heartbreaking, and you find out why he's the way that he is and why he can't really move on, and like why he can't say that he loves a person. Yeah, love is ugly. But I really enjoyed this book, and I really enjoyed the way it ended. It obviously has a happy ending because it's a Colleen Hoover book and it's a romance, so really liked that one. Okay, after that I read November 9th by Colleen Hoover. I was really on a Colleen Hoover kick for a while. This book is really cute. I didn't like it as much as Ugly Love, but I did like it. It is kind of about a couple, or they're not a couple, but they're two people who meet, and they end up spending the day together. It's on November 9th, and they kind of make a pact that I think for like 5 years after or something, they're gonna spend, or maybe just forever. They make a pact that they're always gonna meet up on November 9th and just kind of catch up and, you know, figure out what's been going on in each other's lives. Again, they obviously have a mutual attraction, but nobody will say it. So they meet up every year and kind of go over like what has happened in that past year. And then, you know, there's times where like one of them is in a relationship and it's super sad because they're obviously in love with each other, and it just goes through their life for over like 5 or 6 years. So it was a cute book, and there was a crazy twist in this, I remember. I won't spoil it, but there was a crazy twist. Okay, after this, I read Verity. This is the last Colleen Hoover book for, I think that was, yeah, this is the last Colleen Hoover book. Verity was insane. That was my favorite Colleen Hoover book. I can understand the slack that people will give Colleen Hoover about her other books, but Verity, absolutely not. That was an insane book. It was a thriller. We know that I love a good thriller. It was a thriller, but it was also kind of a, like a forbidden romance, if you will. It was insane. The book ends with so many questions and twists, and she really leaves it up for interpretation. You know, if you know, you know. There's people who are team letter, there's people who are team manuscript. Essentially, it is about a girl who is kind of like an aspiring writer. She meets this guy who ends up hiring her to finish writing his wife's book. She knows who his wife is. She's a super famous author, and basically this author writes like very, very dark books, and she kind of starts going through all of her stuff. She finds an unpublished manuscript that is her confessing to killing her children or attempting to kill her children. So it's kind of insane, and she like doesn't know if she should tell the husband or not. While this is happening, she's living with them. She is also developing feelings for her husband, with his wife like living upstairs in like a, not a coma, but kind of like a coma, and she's like paralyzed, or so they think. I don't know. It's wild. So she ends up feeling like she's being watched, and she sees the wife at times, but the husband is like, there's no way. She's like paralyzed and bedridden. It's crazy. So you end up reading a letter at the end that says that it was not true. But then there's people who are like, how could she write that way about her children? Like, how could you write about murdering your own child? But she tries to say like, oh, I was just trying to get into a really dark place. It's crazy. I think she did it, but I don't know. Great book. Highly recommend. Okay, after that, I read Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. This book was cute. It wasn't my favorite. It's basically about a girl in Maine. We love a little lakeside book, and she meets a guy named Archer who does not talk. She knows how to sign though, so she ends up kind of communicating with him through sign language, and he's very isolated because he like has like a, he kind of has like a terrible event that happens to him, and she is the only one that will kind of give him the time of day and like get to know him, and they end up having a beautiful little love story together. It was a very sweet book. I gave it a 4 out of 5. After that, I read I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. This book was insane. Jeanette McCurdy's memoir about her life and her mom. It is so heartbreaking, but also funny at times. I think she has a real gift for writing. I also enjoyed it because I was a big Disney Channel, Nickelodeon kid growing up. I definitely watched iCarly, so I watched Jeanette McCurdy, and we're like around the same age, so I feel like I watched her grow up as I was growing up. Kind of watched Sam and Cat, but was kind of aging out at that time. But it's very interesting and heartbreaking to see what she was going through off screen in that time. And I remember being jealous of all of these actors and wishing that I could be on these shows, and then you find out what was happening back behind the scenes, and it's not all it was cracked up to be. So again, she found a way to make it humorous at times, also heartbreaking. Also her mom was crazy. But yeah, great book. I very highly recommend. Okay, after this is when I got into my fantasy era, and I started the ACOTAR series. So A Court of Thorns and Roses was obviously the first book. Amazing, 10 out of 10. It starts off as a very Beauty and the Beast type story where like she gets kidnapped kind of, but kind of falls in love with her captor. And then there's like, I remember seeing a TikTok where it was like, it's Beauty and the Beast, but Belle is illiterate and you're rooting for Gaston. And that is the perfect description of this book. Feyre is our main girl. She is illiterate, poor girl. And you can kind of look at Tamlin as like the Beast, and we think we're rooting for him, but we're not. And we get introduced to the character Rhysand, who we love. He is kind of introduced as the Gaston of this series, but we love him. I knew from the beginning, I didn't really feel like I was played because I knew he was gonna be a bigger character from the moment we met him, and I was in love with him truly from the moment that we met him. Like, I don't know, something about the way he carried himself, I really liked him. So I never felt Feyre's hatred as much, or I don't know, I don't think she really hated him. I think that she was being fed a lot of lies and that was altering her opinion, but I never really felt like he was a bad guy. I was always secretly rooting for him. But the first book, so good, amazing. I want to eventually reread the series. It's just, it is a 5-book series with potentially more coming out soon, so it would be some time commitment. Next up we have A Court of Mist and Fury. That is one of my top reads ever, for sure of the year, but like I think ever. I love that book so much. I am in love with Rhys. I love him so much, and this book was just so sweet. The love story between Feyre and Rhysand is amazing, and you really get to see them go from that enemies to lovers trope. So good. I have reread like sections of this book. What I would give to just read it for the first time again. Such a good book. I love it. Also, chapter 54, chapter 55, if you know, you know. After that, I went into A Court of Wings and Ruin, which is the 3rd book in the ACOTAR series. Another 5 out of 5. This book was so intense. There is war, there's love, there's people being traitors. Like, oh my gosh, it was an insane book. Yeah, again, if you're gonna read this series, I would literally, this might be controversial, I would say at least read the first 3. Insane, amazing. A Court of Frost and Starlight, the 4th book. This one's kind of like a novella. It's super short. I think it was only like 200 pages. Yeah, it's 272 pages. This one took me a long time to read. I think as readers, we deserved a little bit of a break from all of the war and heartbreak that was going on in the story. But to me, it was just a little slow paced. It was a little bit boring. I know some people really liked that, some people really didn't. I thought it was cute. It was cute to just see them kind of living out day to day. Like, I mean, they deserve it after everything they've been through. But again, I just found it a little bit boring at times. Also, there was a lot of POV switches throughout it. I think it was to get us set up for the next book, but I was kind of not a fan of just how many perspectives we were going through. Okay, after this, I went into The Housemaid by Freida McFadden, a thriller. I thought it was time I got back into thrillers. Just a super short read. Freida is really good at making these short, quick, readable thrillers. This is a great book. It's about a family who hires a housemaid. She has a very dark past that she doesn't want anybody to know about, but the wife does know about it, and the wife was very mistreated by the husband and is hoping that Millie, who is the housemaid, can help her get revenge, and she does. After this, I read Happy Place by Emily Henry. This book was so sweet, and literally my review is just a tear, and it just says that's all, because that's really how I felt about this book. It's a second chance romance trope, if you're into that, and I thought this book was just very sweet, and it really made me, I feel like I related to where they were in life. It was like about these kind of like, they had been together I think since like high school, since college. They'd been together since college. They were like married. Their friends didn't know that they were actually separated at this point, in the middle of, I think, getting a divorce. But they both got invited on a trip. It went through a lot of friendships and just relationships in general. Like, as you're getting older, drifting apart from your friends, feeling like everything is changing. You know, the lake house that they go to every single summer is getting sold, and so it's like things are changing. We're going into a new chapter of our lives. They didn't tell their friends about their divorce, so they're heartbroken about that. It was just a crazy book on just relationships and happiness in general. Despite it being called A Happy Place, it was not really a happy book. There was a good ending in the end, but I just thought it was a great take on feeling a little bit lost in your like late 20s, early 30s, and growing up. It did a great job illustrating that, and I felt like I really related to a lot of the characters. A Court of Silver Flames. I almost said Thorns and Roses. A Court of Silver Flames, which is currently the last book in the ACOTAR series. This book, we're gonna get a little controversial here. This is the longest book in the series. I do not feel like this book needed to be 800-ish pages. I am not a huge fan of Nesta, and I was not a huge fan of Nesta for a majority of the book. Like, I'm talking about 75% of the book. I hated her. I know there's a lot of people who say like, oh, well, if you're an older sibling, you relate to her and yada yada. I am an older sibling. I would never treat my brother the way that Nesta treated her sisters. That's just the end of it. I think that Nesta had a lot of trauma, it validated trauma. I still don't think that that gave her the right to act the way that she did, especially towards Feyre, who nothing was ever really her fault. I don't know. I just did not agree with a lot of the choices that Nesta made. I also did not love that this book was from the third person. I don't love third person books, so I felt like we didn't really get to see Nesta's perspective on things. I felt for a majority of the book like she was just being an asshole just to be one. Like, everyone was being so nice to her and like giving her all of these, they were being so sympathetic and just giving her a lot of chances, and like she was so rude to Cassian for like no reason for so much of the book. She does redeem herself in the end. I think that she had to go on this arc to get there. I don't know. I just really struggled to like her character. Also, don't get me started on, I am so upset. I'm a little bit upset that Feyre and Rhysand had a baby. I think that they had so much more to do in their story and with their characters other than have a child, but that's just my opinion. I'm not a big fan of when books end with like, oh, and then they got married and they had a kid. I'm like, I don't think that that needs to happen. I feel like there's other ways to end a book that shows that they had a happily ever after. I don't know. But I'm not a huge fan that they had a kid. I am especially not a huge fan that we got to see her pregnancy through Nesta's eyes. I hate that. I am just so mad that we were robbed of seeing Feyre and Rhysand's perspectives during the pregnancy. I am so mad that they, to me, did not feel like they were in a majority of the book. I mean, obviously it's from Nesta's perspective. I don't know. I'm not over their love story. I feel like there is still so much to tell, so I'm very bitter about it, but we'll move on. I digress. This video is gonna be so long. I'm so sorry. After that, I read Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. This was such a sweet story about just like childhood friends turned lovers. There was a dual timeline, which I really loved. I love when books kind of give us that peek into the past and show how that affects their actions in the future. I thought it was super cute. Also, like, literally want to move to a lake house because of this book. Next up, I read People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. This was another second chance romance, kind of had a dual timeline throughout the book. I thought it was a very cute book. I didn't like it as much as Happy Place, but you know, we love a good little rom-com. It's pretty short, 364 pages. I thought it was a really cute story and obviously ends with a happy ending. All right, we're getting into it. Fourth Wing. Fourth Wing is, at this point, one of my favorite books of all time. I am obsessed. It's all I can think about. Truly, I feel like I am back in time and like I am reading The Hunger Games or Twilight. Like, that is the obsession that I feel right now. That is the fangirl that I feel. I'm so happy that Book Talk only fuels my obsession, if you will. I'm obsessed with the story. I am obsessed with the characters. I'm obsessed with Xaden, that's for dang sure. I could not suggest it more. It is a great book for people who don't normally read fantasy and they want to get into fantasy, which is why Rebecca Yarros wrote it. It is a romantasy, if you will, so romance and fantasy. And it is about a war college, hence my little jacket there. It is about a war college and there are dragons, there's love, there's hot men, everything that you could want. I am a huge fan of this book series, a huge fan of Rebecca and her writing. I'll talk about it a little bit more when we get to Iron Flame, but like, she knows what she's doing. And we are in for a roller coaster. We are in for a ride. The twist at the end of this book was just insane. Like, I wish I could read it for the first time. I am going to be rereading it soon, but oh my gosh, the twist was just crazy. And we've got an enemies to lovers trope. We kind of have like a fated mates trope through their dragons. I just love it. I love it. Okay, after that, I was in a little bit of a book slump waiting for Iron Flame. So I went on to read Crying in H Mart, which is by Michelle Zauner, who is the singer, or she's kind of like the only one, I think, of Japanese Breakfast. This book, it was very short. It took me a while to get through. I gave it 3 stars. It's hard for me. I don't like giving anything less than like a 4-star on Goodreads. I just feel bad because the author put so much work into this. It is about her story of growing up and struggling with, you know, not feeling like Korean enough, but not feeling white enough either, and her relationship with her mom. I thought it was a great book. It was very sad and very heavy, and I think that's why it took me so long to get through. It's just sometimes I was just not in the mindset to be put in a sad mood or read about a sad relationship. I think at the end she kind of like validates why her mom acted the way she did, and like, I get it, it's her mom. I don't think that she was valid in the way that she acted, but that's just me as an outsider perspective. This book was definitely very intimate though. It felt like these were her journal entries, and like, we're reading them, so at times I was like, whoa, I feel like I should not know this stuff about you. But you know, it was ultimately a good book. Very sad. I don't necessarily know if I would recommend it. I think it just depends where you're at mentally if you should read it or not. All right, next up we read Never Lie. We were kind of getting into the Halloween season here. Never Lie was a good book. This was about a newlywed couple who was looking to purchase a home, and they ended up getting trapped in there from a winter storm. They end up going through a secret room and tapes from this psychiatrist who used to own the house, and it gets crazy from there. We know Frida, she always has a big twist, and they're short, easy books to read, so that was a great book. Okay, we are almost there, guys. I decided this year I wanted to start reading the Harry Potter series, because this may come as a shock, but if you know me, but I have never read the Harry Potter series. I say this may come as a shock because I'm a huge Harry Potter fan of like the movies. I grew up watching them. I watch them all the time. I know a lot about the story, but obviously not too much since I haven't read the books. I remember trying to get into them as a kid, but J.K. Rowling style just did not do it for me, and I know that's a little controversial. I just couldn't get into them. I felt like there were times where she gave a lot of description for something that didn't need a lot of description. I think the other thing too is, again, third person. We know I'm not a huge third person type of person. Anyway, she writes in very like proper English. So, you know, I'm somebody who likes these romance books and fantasy books that are usually in first person and are very contemporary and modern. So to read something that is kind of like, I don't want to say outdated, but a very different way of speaking, it's a little hard for me. It is pretty awesome to get to read these though for the first time. I obviously already know how it ends. I've watched all the movies many times. So it's interesting to read them and compare them to the movie. I have kind of been reading the book and then watching the movie and then kind of doing my own mental comparison. I'm like having my own little film as literature class, but I'm enjoying it. The first two, I feel like those are very, very much kids books, which I think is the thing we have to remember, is Harry Potter is a kids series. They're very much kids books. I feel like the writing is very simple. They're very kid themed. So I'm excited to get more into like the juicy stuff, and like when Voldemort comes back and it gets a little bit darker and there's a lot of drama. I just finished Prisoner of Azkaban. It kind of took me a while to get through. It took me like 2 months. This is the one that I have noticed has veered the furthest from the movie. Like, they cover the same plot points, but there was a lot in the book that was not covered in the movie, and I think this is kind of when it's going to start that trend of things not being covered in the movie. I also just want to say that, like, from a filmmaking perspective, I understand why they cut certain things. I know people might not be happy to hear that, but I get it, because there's a lot of montages in the book that I just think would not have translated well to film. So I do understand why they made the choices that they do. I do, however, think that we lack a lot of information from the book that could have been put into the movies somehow. Yeah, this is where I feel like we are veering away from the books, and this one just kind of took me a while to get through. I'm so excited to read the Goblet of Fire. That is my favorite Harry Potter movie, so I think it's going to be my favorite book. I just feel like that is the turning point of when things start going dark and evil, and I just think that this is where it's really going to pick up, and it's going to start to get a little bit more mature and a little bit more adult as we are growing up with them. Okay, the last thing that we're going to talk about is Iron Flame. I just am literally so in love with this story. I have seen people write about how they think that Xaden and Violet's relationship was annoying in this book, and to me, I love it. Like, I think that that's what makes them so human. Like, a lot of people are comparing Xaden to, like, Rhysand, who is a 500-year-old fairy, and Rhysand is a 23-year-old boy. Like, of course he's gonna be stupid and take some L's and be annoying at times. And Violet is 21, and, like, of course she's gonna make stupid mistakes, and, like, her brain is, like, not fully developed, you know? I love it, because I think that that's what makes them so human. And I think that in fantasy, we're used to reading about these perfect characters who are like 500 years old and mythical beings, but these are just kids. They're kids who are in extreme circumstances also. Like, I am sure even at 28, I would be making some questionable decisions if there were dragons around me and people wanting to kill me. So I personally love it. I think that they are working through a relationship. This is going to be a 5-book series, and Rebecca needs to draw out that relationship. If it was already perfect, there would be, like, no need to keep reading, you know? So I fully understand why she needs to throw in a little bit of drama and why they need to kind of have their give and take. I don't know. I think if you don't like it, that is totally okay. I personally love it. I don't mind. I'm not looking at this for, like, super high level writing skills. I'm looking at it for, like, what it's gonna make me feel, and if I can see this world and understand it. And I feel that way. A huge fan. I literally cannot wait for the 3rd book to come out. I am waiting for her announcement to come with the release date. I'm obsessed with it. I'm gonna reread them. I'm just kind of holding off until we get a little bit closer, I think, to potentially her releasing it, or at least releasing a date. But I'm obsessed. I could talk about this forever. I literally would, like, create a podcast to talk about books if I could, so I could just talk for like an hour about a single book. I would love it. I'm gonna stop myself though, because I already know that this video is so long, so I'm so sorry. Those are all of the books that I have read this year. I think I'm at 24, and I'm currently reading The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is the Hunger Games prequel. I am pretty positive I will finish this before the end of the year, which will put me at 25 books for the year, and I think that's a pretty solid round number. So I'm happy with that. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I know that this is a long video. I'm gonna have to edit down a lot, I'm sure. But thank you so much for watching. Like I said, please feel free to leave any book suggestions down below. Leave your opinions, leave your favorite books. Let's have a conversation down in the comments about all of our favorite books, and let me know if you guys like these type of videos, if you want more book themed videos, if I should create a podcast. I just need one person to suggest it, and I think I would do it. But thank you for letting me ramble on about books for however long this video is. As always, make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!